Welcome to the Rise Together podcast weekly hot take series. Every week, we're going to bring you powerful stories and strategies from leaders who are making a real impact by building stronger, more resilient communities. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools to thrive in both your personal and professional life.
Hi, everybody. This is Beth Almaris, and I'm with the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. And I'm really excited to be here today with you and to introduce you to our guest. But first, just a bit about the foundation. We're a small nonprofit, and we're really dedicated to helping individuals and organizations build strength and resilience through skill building education. So, not just knowledge, but how do you take that knowledge and apply it, right? Like, that's what we all kind of need help with. You can know something and still not do it. So that's what skills building education is all about. So I'm really excited today to talk to Josh Hoaby. Josh is the executive director at the Minnesota Transportation Museum. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good. How are you? Of
I'm good as well. Thanks for joining me and being willing to share some of your story. I know folks will
course.
really enjoy this conversation. So you ready to get started?
Of course.
Excellent. So why don't we start with tell me a little bit about the museum?
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm the executive director for the Minnesota Transportation Museum, and we are a historical museum in downtown St. Paul. Is kind of one half of what we do. We have an 80,000 square foot museum facility where we have full size locomotives and passenger trains and all of that sort of stuff. We host a number of different groups and field trips and community groups and all of those things. Everything that you would think a museum does. But the other half of what we do in St. Paul is we actually do all of our own restoration on site.
Oh, wow.
And we're one of what we know of. This might not be true, but what I've been told is we're one of three functioning roundhouses in the country that's open to the public. And what that means is that we can take tours in the back while things are getting worked on, which is different than a private roundhouse where all that stuff's closed off to the public. So we're a really unique organization in that aspect where we can create a lot of engagement, a lot of excitement just by bringing people in the back. And then the other half of what we do is we run an excursion train in the summer and the fall along the St. Croix River. Everything from wine and beer tasting train rides to pizza rides to Disney princess rides to everything you can think of. And that's just one of our main ways to create engagement and excitement around what we do.
Oh, wow. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
much of
great.
a princess girl, but I could get down with a pizza train. I'm not gonna lie.
Heck yeah, absolutely.
So tell me, how big is your organization? How many folks that work there?
So we're primarily a volunteer organization. We only have 6 people on staff, but we have 130 volunteers. So we're enormous in our volunteers, and they are incredible and do so much for us. And we do really have a pretty small staff, just two full-time employees, and then 4 part-time. So
That's amazing to have that
yeah,
much volunteer engagement.
yeah, it's pretty wild, and it seems like every week our volunteer coordinator is telling us that we've added another volunteer. So
Yeah.
it's a good problem that we're learning to deal with. So
Yeah. Now I'm a huge volunteer in my own community, so um this isn't something we often talk about. So what do you do in terms of like making volunteers feel really appreciated and really part of the team? How do you guys navigate that?
yeah, I think it comes from I've been working with volunteers for 15 years, which is great, setting me up to be in an organization like this. But what I found is leading volunteers, finding ways to know them as individuals, which is hard with 130, but you can find people and you can kind of those where volunteers don't just feel like a number, especially if they're there every week or they're more often, that we get to know them personally, that we kind of know what's going on in their lives. If they have a grandkid who won a hockey tournament, we make sure and send a card to the family. We try to make sure we
Um,
go out of our way to make sure that our volunteers feel known and loved from the organization as people. And then anybody who runs volunteer organizations will tell you if you invest 10 extra percent in your volunteers, they're going to give you 150 extra percent. So it's just those little
Really?
things that we do, and yeah, and we've created and are creating a pretty great culture around NTM, which is fun. Um, and I think the biggest thing that we do that's unique and something that mentors have expressed to me is we tell our volunteers publicly that we want to appreciate them and we're going out of our way to do that. And when you do that publicly and tell them, that not only holds me as the leader accountable to do that, but it gives them permission to say, hey, I didn't feel appreciated when I went out of my way to do this, rather than just bottling it up and me never knowing that they don't feel like it. When we talk about it at our weekly huddles and when every email we go out, we want that open feedback from our volunteers on how do we make this an excellent experience for them too.
I love hearing that because as a longtime volunteer, you don't always get that. You don't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a lot of churn and burn with volunteers, I think, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And we try to avoid burnout. We try to make sure, and we tell volunteers, with some of our ones that are there all the time, it's like, hey, don't come today. Like, it's going to be a slow day. Go just relax and rest. And we appreciate all you do. And, I mean, they show up anyways, but it's the thought of like, hey, we care about you. We don't want you to burn out. This is big.
Yeah. So what attracted you to working in a museum? So I know you've been in the nonprofit sector for a while, but this is a little bit different.
Yeah, it's very different and unique for me. Worked with volunteers. I was an executive director at a church for 10 years. So got really good at working with volunteers and kind of navigating that avenue of things. I've always loved museums, love taking my kids to that sort of experience. And honestly, the biggest thing that I enjoy about my job is creating an unmatched experience for the people who come to the museum. That's one of the things that I'm great at, one of the things that I lead well at. And this organization gave me an opportunity to kind of flex that side of my skill set, which is great. I'm also a leader who's really good at fixing things that are a little bit broken. Then a few nonprofits and organizations that I've been in, kind of taking things that everybody was kind of moving in a lot of different directions and helping funnel everything that we're doing, which is what MTM needed when I got there. So it was a really great opportunity for me as a leader to grow, but as also it fit really well with my skill set. So
Yeah, that's a really good point, that coming in and trying to focus. I've been in nonprofits for a very long time, and sometimes
yeah,
we try and be everything to everybody, or we try
yeah,
and grow new things before we've put enough energy into what we already were doing. So
yeah.
that
Well, and I think
focus
to
is
your point
very,
too, when you're a volunteer run primarily, and it's not narrow, the volunteers will just kind of run in whatever way they think that they should because they're so passionate about the organization. So never back in and saying, hey, these are the three things we're going to focus on for the next calendar year. Was tricky in those first 90 days because people are feeling like you're taking things that they've worked really hard
yeah,
away from them. But helping them to navigate through that change was good. So
yeah. And do you guys have a board you work with as well?
yeah, so we have a 13-person board of directors that I report to, primarily made of volunteers from the museum itself, but we do have, I think it's 4 now from outside the museum, which is great. So
Yeah. Great. So what looking forward for the next 5 years, what are some of the challenges that you see facing your industry and some of the things that you're doing to prepare yourself?
yeah, I mean, for every nonprofit, I mean, it's funding and volunteers are always things that, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we're a historic building, so twice as normal. So
Mm-hmm.
our building is 110 years old, which means that the walls are 110 years old and the roof is 80 years, all the things that come with that.
Yeah.
So that's the easy answer. The other answer is what we're really trying to do as an organization is figure out what does our immediate community need from us if we're looking at ourselves not a museum but as a nonprofit, what can we
Mm-hmm.
fulfill as from a community need perspective, and can we focus on that? So we've really shifted our focus to being more of an educational facility, focusing on engaging and entertaining kids when they're coming in for field trips, and then giving them some more education when they're a little bit older in high school, and actually bring them back into the shops and letting them work on things, and then involving them post-secondary and actually creating a workforce development program and job training, which will hopefully create a pipeline to railroad jobs in the future. So that's our big, hairy, audacious goal, is to create a workforce pipeline where we're training people on site at our facility, that leads to a job pipeline. We have four major railroads in Minneapolis, so we can create a job pipeline.
Are you partnering with them? Are you partnering with the railroads on the workforce development program?
Yep. So it's way in the early stage. The goal is to get a couple of them to send instructors over to us so that they can be training and teaching people what they're looking for from employees. And then, I mean, we do everything from HVAC and blacksmithing and welding and carpentry and all that too. So kind of creating our own little workforce program, which would be great.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well done, you.
Well, yeah, ask me in 5 years. We'll see where we're at.
We'll come back in 5 years
That
and
sounds
see
great.
how it went.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really, I imagine your board is pretty thrilled with that. Like, that's a really innovative and big goal.
Yeah, and it allows us to tap into funding that we haven't been able to tap into before, which is great. From a board perspective and from a bottom line perspective, but also it's accomplishing everything that we want. We want to engage, entertain, and involve and educate people around the railroad, and we can do that really well through these 3 phases of this program. And we're seeing more people come into the museum than ever before. We're seeing more people ride the train than ever before. So just that little shift in focus and really identifying what we want to be as an organization has really springboarded us to some great growth.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine, and we're in a bit of turbulent times right now, to say the least, that sense of community is going to be even more important, right? Like,
for sure.
I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah. And we want to always be somewhere that, the community is proud to be a part of, and to volunteer and to help out when they can. And we want to be able to make sure we're doing that back too.
Yeah. That's great. Well, this has been a really fun conversation, and one I haven't had yet, right? So, and I learned what roundhouse means. So you've educated and entertained me.
I'm glad. That's the mission.
That's the mission. You're right on board. So if folks are interested in learning more, how can they get a hold of you, Josh? Or where can they find you?
They can probably easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. That's tied to everything. Otherwise you can go to our website, trainride.org, and shoot us an email. But yeah, I'd love to connect with anybody and everybody.
Trainride.org. That's a great URL.
It's a good one. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. It looks good on a t-shirt, so it works out good.
I imagine it does. All right. Well, thank you so much, Josh, and thanks to all our listeners, and I will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us today on our Rise Together podcast weekly hot take series. We hope you've been inspired by today's stories and strategies for building stronger, more resilient communities. Remember, resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about growing through every challenge to become bigger and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who could benefit from these insights. Stay connected, stay resilient, and we'll see you next time.